Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So today I want to talk about Game of Thrones and in particular dragons, or more so why they all died out in Westeros and Essos. Despite not being around for over 150 years, the evidence of dragons was so strong and factual that they never really fell into the mythological category of did they or did they not exist. They were real and they were used to conquer the continents of Essos under the Valerians and Westeros under the Targaryens, but with little to no explanation. New dragons could not be hatched after the previous dragons had died out. Despite efforts to bring them back, the species remained extinct until Daenerys Targaryen's 3 dragons hatched in 299 AC. In today's video, I want to go back in time. I want to go back to those final years before the first extinction in order to examine and analyze all contributing factors as to why the dragons died out. So keep watching, it's gonna be an interesting discussion. Welcome back everyone and thank you for the support. Let's just briefly touch down on the actual makeup of dragons and their role in the world up until the Dance of Dragons book. Bear in mind you're going to hear me say the word dragon a lot, which I know can be annoyingly repetitive, but I'll do my best to space the use of the word out as much as I can. Anyway, let's continue. So, dragons were considered the most beautiful, majestic creatures to ever grace the continent of Essos and Westeros. They were incredibly unique as the genetic makeup consisted of magic. That's right, they were actually part magic. It was also near impossible to tell their gender, which led many maesters to believe that dragons could change their gender at will in order to create a more convenient and suitable environment when laying eggs. What I mean by this is, if, for example, there's solely male dragons in an area, then one of them would change gender in order to procreate. The creatures prospered in their homeland of Valeria, where they were hatched successfully and with relative ease. Dragons were used by the Valerians to carve out a massive empire which spanned almost the entire continent of Essos, known as the Valerian Freehold. They existed in the near 100s up until the doom of Valeria, which I'll talk about momentarily. The creatures were brought to Westeros by the Targaryens and used by Aegon and his sister wives to conquer 6 of the 7 kingdoms. At their peak in Westeros, dragons were made up of about 20 to 25 in numbers and were all of adequate size, the majority extremely large. The Targaryens also loved and respected their dragons greatly. However, after the year 131 AC, dragon eggs stopped hatching. 16 of the last remaining dragons were dead, 3 of the last 4 were wild dragons with unknown fates, and the last recorded dragon in Westeros died relatively young in 153 AC. The dragon was female, had withered wings and a deformed skull. She did, however, leave a clutch of eggs that never hatched and were believed to have become petrified. That was it. Dragons became extinct in the world and would not be seen again for another 150 years. So the question is, what happened? Why did the eggs stop hatching? Why were the dragons smaller? Why was the last dragon a deformed, withered creature? How did dragons leave the world? Well, to be honest, there's a number of factors that contribute to their extinction, and I'll start with that last question. How did dragons leave the world? Well, they didn't. They were taken back, and I'll explain what I mean by that a little later on. To get our answer, we've got to leave Westeros and go directly to Essos and talk about a city called Valeria. Now, many Game of Thrones fans know all about this city, so Valeria is the place that I believe it's safe to say dragons originated from. The capital city of the Valerian Freehold, Valerians used dragons to conquer almost the entire continent of Essos. The families of the Freehold were all dragon lords and had extremely deep connections with their fire drakes. They used powerful enchantments in addition to dragon horns in order to bend the creatures to their will. It is also said that magic was used heavily in the Freehold. Valeria was the center of everything. It was the place to be, the place where technology was at its peak. It was a place that held all of the secrets of life, and its people were unique themselves, appearing to be more than the average human, their silver hair and indigo or violet eyes being the most striking features of their heritage. In a nutshell, the Valerians had the process or hatching and taming dragons nailed down to a T. There was no other place or people that could do it better or even do it at all. So then something called the Doom of Valeria happens, which is basically the eruption of 14 volcanoes which destroys everything I was just talking about. All of the knowledge, technology, secrets of magic, scripts, books, things like how to make Valerian steel, and most notably, the dragons, dragon eggs, the people, all gone. Everything completely eradicated out of existence, and Valeria was left in nothing but total ruin. So this means that all of the remaining dragons now resided in Westeros. Now this is absolutely huge because it means that the dragon source point, for better words, was gone, and the Targaryens were now the last living dragon lords. They now had the responsibility to protect dragons and contribute to the species remaining in existence. The issue here is they didn't do a great job at all. Well, they did at the beginning. They loved their dragons and they valued the bond that they had with them. They even brought in traditions of placing a dragon egg in with newborns, so the bond can begin before the dragon had even hatched and before the child could walk, crawl, or even talk. So dragons seemed to prosper under the Targaryen rule, and 20 of the creatures, all of adequate size and power, graced the lands of Westeros. And it seemed like they would continue to prosper. That was until civil war broke out, which became known as the Dance of the Dragons. So you remember that part just a couple of moments ago where I said that the Targaryens didn't do a good job? Well, it starts right about now. The Blacks and the Greens waged a prolific war that went down in history for the sheer amount of violence it involved. Just to know, guys, the Blacks were supporters of Queen Rhaenyra's claim and the Greens were supporters of King Aegon's claim. Of the 20 dragons, 16 of them were killed during the Civil War, with many of them suffering gruesome, horrific deaths. No way for dragons to die. Take Caraxes for example, wing torn clean off, belly slashed wide open, entrails falling out. The dragon's last act was pulling itself out of the water to die just outside of Harrenhal. The dragon that did it, Vhagar, had its throat ripped out and it died on impact with the ground. The last remaining dragons to exist after the dance were the Cannibal, Silverwing, Sheepstealer and Mourning, all of which have unknown fates, the Cannibal and Sheepstealer never having been mounted at all. Now, those 4 dragons are believed to have died of old age, as they were never seen in Westeros or Essos again after 131 AC. So something very strange now begins to happen. Dragon eggs no longer hatch despite numerous attempts to do so. They slowly become petrified and appear as if they have turned to stone. Now this is a major problem because all of the mounted dragons died in the dance. They can't hatch anymore, and suddenly there's no more of these beautiful creatures left in the world. They're gone. The question is, why is this happening? What is the reason? Well, as I've said, it seems to be a number of factors that stacked up on top of each other. We know Valeria is gone, so no more dragons from there. We know the Targaryens are responsible for eliminating 80% of the species as a whole in Westeros, and 100% of the dragons they actually hatched themselves. So I just want to talk briefly about hatching for a moment. It is an extremely delicate process and requires an exact balance in order for it to be successful. Now, dragon eggs have been known to hatch spontaneously on their own, but the actual practice is a life for a life. The timing had to be perfect, the magic had to be there, and a Targaryen Valerian dragon lord had to be the one to hatch it. Get it wrong and it could result in dire consequences. Just ask King Aegon V. Well, actually don't ask him because he's dead. He died in the fires he created trying to hatch eggs, better known as the tragedy of Summerhall. The truth is in the actual creature itself, guys, and that is the importance of magic. In George R.R. Martin's world, magic is present, but it is a rarity. It can't just be conjured at will as much as one requires. Its beauty is that it graces the world and then it leaves the world. Dragons are a total representation of magic gracing the world, and the Targaryens put these majestic creatures into battle against each other. They no longer appreciated the beauty and importance of dragons in their world. Dragons were supposed to be used to strengthen their kingdom as a unit, not to be pitted against each other in a civil war that should have never happened. They were wiped out by their riders, and it was quickly learned that they were not indispensable. Oh, and speaking of being pitted against each other, that's something else I need to highlight: the dragon pit. What a massive mistake that was, as it operated as something that completely ran against the nature of dragons. They were chained up and left there until they were needed for use. This was not the natural habitat of a dragon. They needed complete freedom in order to grow, and the riders relied on the bond they had with their creature in order for them to come at their beck and call. Dragons then stopped growing due to these enclosures, and little by little, the magic that surrounded them slowly began to leave the world. Dragons were a gift that was not to be wasted, but more importantly, not overlooked and not taken for granted. They were returned to whatever or wherever they came from, as their riders were no longer worthy of their presence, nor was the lands of Westeros or Essos. Eggs no longer hatched naturally either, and the magic that was needed to do so left the Targaryens. It's not a total surprise to know that they had magical blood. Well, some of them anyway. For 150 years there was no sign or sight of a dragon, thought to have been extinct until the very last Targaryen, Daenerys Stormborn, hatched 3 in her husband's funeral pyre. As of today's book canon, the 3 of them still remain alive. So guys, that is my video essay on why all the dragons died out in Westeros and Essos. Make sure to leave your comments in the comment section down below. Tell me what video you want to see next. If it's a vampire video, a Game of Thrones video, a Harry Potter video, or any other franchise, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.